What if your entire life was a prayer someone else decided you would make? What if silence wasn't peace, but punishment? Tonight you'll fall asleep as someone the gods demanded, but never explained. A child taken from her family, wrapped in ritual, trained to burn quietly for a city that never asked what it cost. You are Rome's holy daughter, a Vestal Virgin. You will not marry, you will not touch, you will not speak out of turn, not for 30 years, but you will hold the flame. They say it must never go out. They say your body belongs to the gods. They say your silence protects the city. But who protects you? Close your eyes, breathe in the incense and stone, and let the past wrap around you like a woolen cloak. This is not fiction, this is history, and it's going to sleep beside you tonight. If stories like this help you unwind, consider subscribing, only if it feels right. And tell us in the comments where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, step quietly. The temple doors are open. You're 6 years old. Not yet old enough to plait your hair properly. Not yet old enough to understand what the word sacrifice really means. But old enough to be taken. Your mother does not scream. She does not cling to your tunic or argue with the priest. She bows, deep and low, as women are expected to. The folds of her dress catch the dust. She stays bowed even after the priest has turned away, even after you are led past her, even after your sandals crunch softly down the gravel path. She does not look back. Neither do you. You don't know yet that this is the last time you will see her without a curtain between you. You don't know yet that your name will be gently erased, not by malice, but by duty. You were chosen. That is what everyone keeps saying. A divine honour, a blessing from Vesta herself. You are too young to know what you were chosen for, only that no one dares to say no. The Domus Publica is colder than your family's home. The walls are taller, smoother, hung with crimson drapes that never flutter. You're not told where to sleep. You're told where not to stand. You're not welcomed. You are washed. The woman who bathes you wears no smile. Her hands are brisk, her tone flat. She scrubs behind your ears as if erasing the remnants of your old life. Then you're dressed. White tunic, white sash, hair pulled tightly back until your scalp itches. You are made clean, visible, invisible. At dinner you sit at a long table with 6 other girls. One is crying softly, one is staring straight ahead. One looks no older than 5. You do not speak. You chew your lentils, you swallow. You learn quickly that hunger is easier than attention. No one tells you what the rules are, but you hear them in every footstep, every silence, every held breath. One girl forgets to bow before entering the inner courtyard. She is not scolded. She is sent away. No one says where. No one asks. At night, you lie on a narrow cot. The sheets are stiff. The pillow is thin. The room smells of smoke and polished stone. You miss your sister. You miss the chipped wooden stool where you used to play with pebbles. You miss the scratch of your mother's wool sleeve against your cheek. You do not cry, not because you are brave, but because you are watched. Always you are watched, even when no one is looking, especially then. The next morning you are woken before sunrise. The bells ring, low and heavy, like they're dragging something across the sky. A woman places a bowl of barley porridge in front of you. You eat with 2 fingers, silently. No one speaks. No one needs to. That day, you see the flame for the first time. It burns in the round temple, suspended on a stone altar like a heartbeat. It is not large, not towering. just a steady flicker in a room that smells like dry pine and reverence. You're told this fire must never go out. Never. Not even in storm. Not even in war. If it dies, Rome dies. You do not know what that means, but the woman who says it does not blink. You believe her? You spend the day sweeping ash from marble, learning to walk with your arms folded, your chin down, your steps even. You're not told to smile. You're told not to laugh. You're not here to be joyful. You are here to be pure. The words echo. 6 chosen girls to serve for 30 years. 30 years! That is more than you have been alive. More than you can even imagine. You do the math in your head. You will be 36. By then, your mother's hair will be grey, if she is still alive. You're told you will be honoured, guarded, protected, but you're not told you will be lonely. You're not told your name will be replaced with Vestal. You're not told that silence will become your only defence. On the 3rd morning, an older Vestal shows you how to carry the sacred water in a bronze jug. She's kind, but her kindness is the kind of stone that does not crack. She has been here 21 years. She speaks slowly. She watches your face like a priest watches a goat before sacrifice. When she leaves, she says, "Remember, you are Rome's daughter now." You bow. Not because you believe it, but because you must. You're 6 years old, and Rome has already begun to erase you. The flame is older than the Republic. Older than your father's father. Older than names carved into temples. It is said to have come from Troy, carried in the breath of Aeneas himself. You're not sure what that means, but you repeat the words anyway. The fire is everything. It is life. It is empire. It is the line between divine favour and divine punishment. And now, it is your job. You're 8 when they let you tend it for the first time. Not alone. Never alone. 2 older Vestals stand watch behind you. Their eyes do not blink. One holds the sacred simpulum, the ladle for ritual offerings. The other, a bundle of laurel leaves tied in white wool. Your hands shake. You kneel on the marble floor, freshly scrubbed and cold beneath your knees. You hold the oak twig with both hands. The bark is rough. It splinters slightly under your grip. You place it carefully into the fire. The flame accepts it with a soft hiss. You do not breathe until someone nods. Then you exhale, shallow, silent. A single breath, but it feels like a flood. That night, you are not praised. You're handed a piece of flatbread and told to recite the rites of Vesta before sleep. You mouth the words in the dark. Your fingers twitch, as if still holding the twig. There are rules. So many rules. You're not to touch your hair on the days of purification. You're not to speak during the procession of offerings. You're not to allow your robe to brush the altar. Your body is not a body anymore. It is an extension of the ritual. You wake to bells and smoke. Always smoke. The ash clings to the corners of your sleeves, the folds of your sash, the curve of your throat. You learn to brush it away with 3 fingers, clockwise, always clockwise. The fire is never left alone. Even when you sleep, someone is watching it. Even in festival, in storm, in tremor, it burns. You hear stories of the days it almost died. The lightning strike, the broken brazier, the careless novice who let the wind blow through the wrong doorway. They do not say her name. They do not have to. Everyone knows what happened to her. She was buried alive. Not as punishment, but as purification. That is what they say. You're told the fire is a goddess, not a symbol, not a tool, a living deity. You must feed her, tend her, please her. Not with food, with obedience. Sometimes your hands blister from holding the sticks too close. You say nothing. Pain is part of it. There are no scars, just small red offerings. The Temple of Vesta is round, perfectly round. No corners, no shadows. It echoes even when no one speaks. You learn to step lightly. Even your breath feels louder than it should. There are 12 columns around the flame, each one carved with vines and olive branches. They are meant to represent peace, but you think they look like bars. Sometimes visiting priests come to the temple. They walk around the flame. They mumble prayers in heavy voices. They never kneel. They never ask you anything. You are there to be seen, not heard. Once a senator stumbles during an offering. He steps too close. His robe nearly brushes the flame. You gasp, only for a second. The elder Vestal looks at you. Her mouth is flat, her eyes sharper than any blade. Later that night you scrub the temple floor with salt and vinegar until your knees ache. It is not a punishment. It is a reminder of your place, of your oath, of the silence you must carry like a second robe. Years pass. The fire never dims. You learn to see its moods. When it flares too high, the city braces for trouble. When it crackles evenly, people smile at the sky. You're not allowed to believe in omens, but you're expected to understand them. The people come sometimes. Mothers with infants, soldiers before campaigns, slaves hoping for manumission. They kneel outside the temple gates. They whisper into their palms. You cannot hear them, but the fire can. You place a sprig of dried thyme into the flame. It flares gold for a second. Someone says that means a blessing. You don't ask for whom. You keep feeding it, day after day, ash after ash. You give your hours, you give your hands, you give your voice. You do not question. Not because you are holy, but because the fire does not allow questions. You learn to speak less, then to smile less, then not at all. Silence becomes a language. No one tells you directly. There are no scrolls or lectures, but you feel it in the shift of shoulders, in the glances that linger a moment too long when you laugh. You're not here to be seen. You're here to be still. At first you stumble, not your feet, your presence. You breathe too loudly. You exhale too sharply. You shift your weight with too much noise. The older girls do not correct you. They look at you, and you understand. You begin to mimic them. Walk heel to toe. Place your foot on the outer edge, then roll inward. Let your weight settle only when the whole soul has touched the floor. It is not walking. It is gliding. You're taught to fold your hands just so, left over right, thumbs lightly touching, palms facing inward, not pressed. Like holding something precious, something breakable. When you bow, it must be deep, but not dramatic. The incline should suggest humility, not fear. Every movement is an offering. You practice walking around the inner perimeter of the temple without a sound. If the high priest hears you, you must begin again. Once, you cry out when you bump your elbow on a column. You're not punished. You're ignored. It hurts more. From that day, you say nothing when your knee scrapes stone, when your fingers blister from carrying bronze, when your back spasms during an hour-long rite. You become a statue that breathes. You notice the world more. How the sound of wind differs between corridors. How one corner of the temple always smells faintly of crushed mint. How the birds outside the atrium seem louder than the voices within. You're not taught Latin prayers. You're told to memorize them by listening. The chants echo around you like waves. You mouth the words silently before sleep. They sound like spells. You're not a magician, but your body becomes a ritual. You learn to step at the same time as another girl, to bow as one, to exhale in unison. If one of you falters, all falter. The youngest Vestal begins to cough during prayers, soft at first, then more often. She's replaced during rites. She is not seen again. No one speaks of it, but your silences feel heavier afterward, like the air remembers her better than you do. In your 4th year, you're permitted to touch the sacred tools. The aspergillum, the simplum, the patera. Each has a weight. Each must be held with both hands. You're taught how to clean them, not with soap, with ashen wool. You do not scrub, you do not scratch. You wipe with reverence, as if apologizing to the metal for being touched. One tool is used only on days when sacrifices are made at the forum. You're not permitted to ask what those sacrifices are. You're only to clean what returns. Sometimes it smells of smoke, sometimes of blood. The floor of the temple is swept 3 times a day. You sweep it in silence, not because you're ordered to, but because that is what the air expects. Even the dust has a rhythm. Your speech changes even outside the temple. When you're permitted to attend a public ceremony, you speak slowly, softly, as though each syllable must first pass inspection. Your voice is no longer yours. A man on the street tries to flirt. He doesn't recognize your robe. You do not respond. You look at him with the stillness you've practiced for years. He stumbles away as if you cursed him. You return to the temple without a word. You do not laugh about it. You do not tell the others. You fold the story away like your winter cloak. Some girls struggle to stay silent. They whisper at night, giggle when the candles are low. You do not join them, not because you are better, but because you are afraid to forget the weight of quiet. There is power in stillness. It becomes a kind of armour. People bow to you now, not because of your words, but because of your absence. You walk the temple halls with soft feet and softer breath. You fold your hands, you keep your eyes low. You move like a shadow that prays. And in time, even the silence begins to trust you. They bring you the cloak on your 10th birthday. You do not get cake. You do not get songs. You get wool. 3 layers of it. Pure white, hand-woven. It smells faintly of smoke and rosewater. This is your palla, your mantle, your sacred skin. You're helped into it by 2 senior Vestals. They do not speak. Their hands move with quiet precision. One smooths the folds over your shoulder. The other adjusts the edge so it drapes exactly to your ankles. The fabric is heavy, but the weight is not just cloth. It is law, it is duty, it is your future, and it is a warning. The palla is both privilege and shroud. Outside these walls it commands respect. Guards lower their weapons when you pass. Men part in the street as if you carry fire in your palms. You do, in a way. The city sees you as untouchable, pure, chosen. But the cloak carries something else. A curse. If you break your vow of chastity, you will not be whipped. You will not be imprisoned. You will be buried, alive. They call it the supplicia canum, the punishment of the dogs, a symbolic reversal. You, the bringer of Rome's flame, would be extinguished, not by fire, but by earth. The crime is not sex. The crime is imbalance. A broken vow from a Vestal threatens Rome itself. If the flame flickers, they look to your eyes. If the sky darkens, they question your womb. You have never kissed anyone. You're 10, but you already know your body belongs to something else. to someone else. You begin to hold your arms more tightly when walking. You avoid doorways when men stand near. You scrub your own hands 3 times before temple rites, even when they are clean, even when they tremble. Especially then. In the archives you find clay tablets with lists of those before you. Some names are etched clean and deep, others are scratched away. Those are the ones who failed. They are not spoken of, not in prayer, not in story. They are considered worse than traitors, because traitors harm Rome from without. But a fallen Vestal? She curses it from within. Even their families are sometimes punished. The cloak makes you immune to law, but not to rumour. You hear whispers in the baths, from the mouths of matrons who think you do not listen. Too pretty for a Vestal. Her eyes linger too long on the guards. She walks too lightly. They never say your name, but you know they mean you. You lower your gaze, you clench your jaw, you let the cloak settle heavier across your shoulders, and you learn to walk without leaving a trace. The cloak is not removed during sleep, not fully. You drape it near, fold it precisely. Its presence in the room is as sacred as a statue. You dream of it sometimes, of it floating above you, suffocating and soft. The only time it's ever lifted in haste is during execution. That is the one day the flame is left alone. When a Vestal has broken her oath, the gods must not witness her death. The priests close the temple doors, the fire is veiled, and she is led, robed, still, through the forum, to a sealed chamber beneath the earth. They give her a lamp, some bread, a little water, not as kindness, as symbolism. Rome does not kill Vestals, Rome leaves them to the gods. You ask once if the stories are true. The senior priestess says nothing, but her silence is louder than thunder. So you wear the cloak tighter, breathe lighter, sleep shallower, not out of fear, out of reverence. Because if you carry fire, you must also carry the ashes. You no longer belong to your mother. That much is clear. You haven't spoken to her in years. You don't even know if she's alive. And it doesn't matter. Because now, you belong to Rome. The state is your family. It dresses you, feeds you, shelters you. It scolds you gently through priests. It praises you silently with coins and glances. Rome is mother. Rome is father. Rome is God. When you walk through the forum in full regalia, the crowds bow. Even the consul nods when he passes you. You're 11 the first time it happens. You think he's looking at someone behind you. He isn't. Your footsteps echo differently outside the temple, more loudly, as if the stones recognize you. Children point, not in mockery, but in awe. Their mothers hush them, as if even speaking your name too loudly could draw lightning. You're escorted by lictors, those same guards who once might have struck your father for unpaid taxes. Now they part crowds for you. They treat your robe like it's made of sunlight. Because to harm a Vestal is to curse yourself. To spill her blood is to poison Rome's soul. So they protect you like they would a sacred flame, because that's what you are. A walking, breathing fire. You are granted a seat of honour at gladiatorial games, right next to the emperor. Senators stand when you approach, praetors bow. Not because you are powerful, but because you are holy. No other woman in Rome has your rights. You can own property, write a will, free a slave. You're exempt from the hand of the paterfamilias. No father, no husband, no master. Only Rome. But freedom is not what you thought it would be. Freedom, for a Vestal, is a leash made of gold. You are everywhere watched. Not for missteps, but for cracks. The way you speak, how long you look at someone, whether your robe hangs too loosely or too tightly, it all becomes a form of scripture. Rome reads you like a prophecy. You smile once, just once, at a passing musician whose lyre slips from his hand. It's not flirtation, it's pity. But 2 days later, a letter arrives on waxed parchment. It warns you to remember your oaths. There is no signature, only a seal, a wolf suckling 2 infants. Rome has eyes. And Rome remembers everything, even things that never happened. You begin to move more slowly in public, speak more softly. You choose words like a senator chooses laws, carefully, precisely. Because every word you speak echoes against marble. You see your own face once, painted on a ceremonial vase gifted to a provincial governor. Your features are exaggerated, eyes wide, mouth small. It doesn't look like you, but it's labelled with your name. And in that moment you realise Rome doesn't want you. Rome wants the idea of you. You are no longer a daughter of a farmer, or a girl from a hillside town. You are now the daughter of marble columns, of Senate scrolls, of sacred law. Your blood is now ceremonial ink. You try to remember your mother's face. You fail. The only face that comes to mind is the one carved into statues in front of the Senate, the goddess Vesta. You look up at her one evening as torches are lit along the forum. Her eyes are blank, her lips unsmiling, her hand holds fire. She doesn't look down at you. But somehow you still feel judged. The day begins in silence. Before the crows call, before the forum stirs, before the bakers grind their grain. You are already awake, not because of discipline, because of rhythm. Your body has learned the hour without the sun's help. Your eyes open when the world still dreams. You rise, slowly, as you were taught. The movement itself is a kind of offering. No yawns, no stretch, no noise. You're not a girl anymore, you're a vessel. The marble underfoot is cold, always, even in high summer. You do not flinch. The first light filters through the temple's high windows, brushing against the curve of the altar. It touches the sacred flame. You do not tend it yet, not before the ash. The ashes of yesterday's fire must be gathered first. Not discarded, collected. Every day for centuries ashes have been kept in a sacred pit. Your hands, already washed, move with practiced care. The bronze bowl you use has handles worn smooth by women who no longer live. You know some of their names, you know none of their stories. The ash is soft, almost like flour. Sometimes, when your breath catches and the dust rises, you wonder if you are inhaling pieces of history. The ashes of the Republic, of Caesar, of forgotten summers and long-dead olives. You sprinkle a bit on the hearthstone and act both symbolic and necessary. Old ash feeds new flame. As always. Next comes the flour. You carry the bowl from the storage cellar with both hands. It smells faintly sweet, like sun-baked fields and warm linen. This is not for eating. This is for mixing. Water is drawn from the sacred spring, cool, clear, drawn in silence. You mix the flour with salt and water in a marble basin. Your fingers knead gently. No one speaks during this part. The silence is not law, it is tradition. You feel the dough change as you work it, tighten, warm, become alive. Once shaped, you place the sacred cakes on a heated tile. They do not rise, they do not need to. These are mola salsa, the simplest food, the holiest food. You will offer them at the next sacrifice. For now, they cool. You clean the tools, not because anyone will see. but because someone once did. And that's enough. By the time you return, the sun has begun to paint the columns golden. Rome is awakening. You hear hooves, chariot wheels, the shout of a vendor selling figs. But the temple remains still. You relight the flame with the kindling you prepared the night before. It catches instantly. Not because of luck, because of discipline. The fire is fed small chips of sacred wood, cut at specific angles, stored in specific boxes. You do not rush, you do not improvise. The fire does not reward creativity, only reverence. When it blazes steady, you kneel and whisper a single prayer. There are hundreds you know by heart, but this one is short. It does not ask for anything, only thanks. Your voice is softer than the flame, but the gods hear. The rest of the day is filled with detail, dusting altar corners, polishing bronze, refolding ceremonial cloths. Things no one will notice unless they are wrong. You change the oil in the lamp near the statue of Vesta. You count the offerings brought by petitioners. Small coins, flowers, a loaf wrapped in linen. You do not touch the loaf. You note it, record it, bless it. Then place it beside the others. All must be preserved until burned in ritual. Bread does not rot in the temple. That is not law. That is miracle. At midday you eat in the stone chamber behind the temple, with the others. No laughter, but not silence either. Just the soft clink of clay bowls, the scrape of wooden spoons. You eat lentils, a figil mestato, sometimes a cube of cheese. Never meat. Meat is for soldiers, or sacrifices, not for those who feed the soul of Rome. The day ends the same way it began. You lower the lights, sweep stray ashes back into their bowl. You whisper a final prayer to the flame. Your voice trembles a little now, not from fear, from tiredness. The temple darkens, the city softens, the marble cools. You fold your robe, place it beside you, lie flat, and in the final moment before sleep, you exhale ash. And dream of bread. But even in dreams, the rules wait for you. There are no scrolls for this. No marble tablets. No oaths recited aloud. But you learn them anyway. Not from the chief Vestal. Not from priests. Not even from the gods. You learn them from the girls. Older than you. Sharper than you. Watching always. They never correct you in front of the priests. They wait, until the torches are low, until no one else can hear. Then the whisper comes. Don't bow your head that far. Hands folded, never clasped. Don't smile so openly. At first you think it's preference, style, old habits. But then one of the girls disappears for 3 days. When she returns, she won't speak. Her hands tremble when she pours water. Nobody asks what happened. That, too, is a rule. There are rules for kneeling, not just how, but when. Never too early, never too slowly. You're to float to your knees as if lifted by unseen strings, not like you're falling. Falling implies weakness. There are rules for voice. It must be clear, but never sharp. Soft, but not meek. Measured, but not slow. They call it dignitas. But really it's fear with polish. You once ask another girl how she remembers all this. She shrugs. You only forget once, she says. There are rules about speaking to men. Not that you aren't allowed. You are. But every word must be filtered through stone. Polished, polite, brief. Never ask questions. Never let your gaze linger. Never be the last to speak. There's one rule that isn't whispered, but carved behind every eye that meets yours. Don't make anyone doubt your purity. Not because they'd prove you wrong, but because once a doubt is spoken, it becomes real, and real doubts are deadly. There are rules about baths, about scent. Never sweet oil, only olive, never perfume, too indulgent. The gods don't need you to smell like figs. You're not meant to tempt, even accidentally. There are rules about laughter. You may laugh, quietly, briefly, only with the other girls, and never first. You find yourself holding your breath in places where you once laughed freely. In the courtyard, you stand beside the statue of Vesta and wonder if she ever smiled. She doesn't look like she did. One day, a new girl arrives, barely 7. Too small for the robes, too timid for the prayers. You help her, not because anyone tells you to, but because someone once helped you. That too is a rule. She asks you why the chief Vestal always waits before answering the Pontifex Maximus. You think for a moment, then whisper, because power listens first. There are rules for dreams. You must not speak of them. If you dream of a man, you wake early and kneel longer. If you dream of a child, you whisper a prayer to forget. Some say that dreams are signs, omens, but Vestals are not permitted signs, only duties. You begin to feel the rules settle into your bones. Not burdens, just gravity. They hold you in place. One day, a young priest speaks to you as you pour wine at the altar. His voice is too warm, his eyes too kind. You lower your gaze just enough, smile with the corner of your mouth. Then say, "May the gods favour your offering." It's the perfect phrase. He leaves with a nod. You exhale slowly. That night, one of the older girls nods at you during prayers. She says nothing, but it's approval. There's no applause in the temple, no reward. Only the invisible weight of doing it right, of not being noticed by the wrong person at the wrong time. You begin to keep a mental scroll, a litany of if this then that, a logic of obedience, a math of sacred silence. It becomes instinct. By the end of your 2nd year, you no longer have to think about how to stand. Your body already knows. You become a statue in motion. And no one ever tells you, but that's when they trust you. You wake to shouting. Not the ceremonial kind, not the murmurs of prayer. Real shouting. The kind that rises from the throat without permission. The kind that shakes the birds from the rafters. Something is wrong. You blink. Smell something sharp. Not incense, not oil. Smoke. You're on your feet before your name is even called. The fire is not in the temple, but it might as well be. Because somewhere, beyond the marble and gates, Rome is burning. A cart overturned, a lamp kicked over, a bakery left unguarded. It doesn't take much. Wooden homes pressed shoulder to shoulder, thatched roofs that drink flame like wine, insulae built high, cheap and flammable, stairwells that become chimneys. People scream as they carry what they can, cloaks, grain, children, fleeing as stone walls glow orange. And in the centre of the forum, you stand under the dome of Vesta, tending the one flame that must never go out. Because if it does, Rome dies. That's what they say, that's what they believe. And belief in this city is law. So while men throw buckets into chaos, and children cry for mothers, and senators shout for order, you kneel. You kneel and whisper prayers into the ash. Because the fire in your hearth must burn brighter than the fire in the streets. The chief Vestal appears, her robe barely wrinkled. She says nothing. She doesn't need to. You feel the pressure in her silence, the kind that presses down like wet cloth. You feed the flame another pinch of sacred salt. The temple shakes, but only slightly. The city groans like it's alive. Later, when the fire is out, when the smell of wet soot drifts up the hills, you're allowed to sleep. But not before the augurs come. Not before they throw bones. Not before the chief priest examines the flame and nods. "Unbroken," he says. But he still doesn't look relieved. You are not praised. You are not thanked. You're expected. That night you dream of fire, not the sacred kind, the hungry kind. In your dream, you're standing in the street watching a house collapse in flame. No one runs, no one screams. They all turn to look at you. The house keeps burning, but you are the one who feels the heat. You wake with sweat at your temples. Your bed is warm, but the room is cold. It's still dark. The fire never sleeps. Neither do you. In the weeks that follow, small fires flicker up across the city. Here a shop, there a stable. Some claim it's sabotage. Some say the gods are warning Rome. You hear whispers in the markets. Maybe the Vestals lost the blessing. You're 15, and already you understand. You can never make a mistake. The eternal fire must not flicker, because if it does, Rome will find someone to blame. One night a windstorm howls through the city. The temple doors rattle. The fire bends sideways. The youngest girl screams. You slap your palm over the flame, shield it with your body. You burn your wrist. No one sees. But the fire lives. That's what matters. You wrap the wound in cloth and don't tell anyone. Pain is not a crime, but distraction is. That week, Rome sends a thank offering to Vesta. Not to you. They decorate the altar, bring wreaths. The pontifex smiles, the flame glows. Your wrist aches. No one knows. You keep it that way. Because you've learned something important. Even when Rome is burning, you are the one who must stay still. You must be calm so the gods stay calm. You must glow so the city doesn't go dark. And if you burn quietly. That is the rule. The drums begin before dawn. You don't need to see them to know. Their rhythm is different. Not a funeral, not a sacrifice, not a festival of grain or healing. No, these are the games. You dress in your cleanest white robe, not the ceremonial one, not the smoky robe you wear in the temple. This one is lighter, looser at the sleeves. You braid your hair in silence, wrap the cord 3 times. You're not allowed to be late. The games do not wait. The streets are packed before you even leave the temple gate. Vendors shout names of pickled onions. Linen streamers hang like vines from the balconies. Children push past one another to see who can glimpse the golden helmet of a passing gladiator. It's chaos, but somehow still choreographed. Rome loves a spectacle. And you are part of it. Not in the dust, not in the arena, but on a marble seat carved just for you. The Vestals sit near the emperor, high enough to see everything, but not close enough to be spattered. You arrive with your sisters, heads bowed slightly. The crowd parts for you, not because of awe, but because they've been taught to. Some men avert their eyes, others try to catch yours. You do not meet them. Because today, you're both sacred and public. A statue in a crowd, a symbol with a pulse. The horns blow, the gates open, and the first chariot thunders across the sand. You feel it in your ribs. The driver leans in, horse muscles straining, the wheels spitting dust into the stands. The crowd roars. You sit still. A senator behind you drops a fig. A child in front of you shrieks at the whip crack. You breathe in, and out. There's a moment just after the 5th lap when one of the chariots tips. The driver is flung sideways. His tunic catches on the wheel. He is dragged. The crowd gasps, then cheers. A boy nearby claps. A woman throws a garland. The driver does not get up. You blink once, then again, and still you do not move. You've learned to hold your reactions the way others hold daggers. Close, carefully, where no one can see. Later there are gladiators. One with a trident, one with a net. They circle each other like ghosts of war. One lunges, the other slips. The crowd holds its breath, then erupts as blood hits sand. And then, like always, they look to you, to see how the gods feel. You are 15, your hands are folded in your lap, your face does not change. They call it poise, you call it survival. After the games, there's a small feast. You are served honeyed wine but do not drink it. Your stomach is too tight. A young patrician sits across from you. He tries to ask about the net fighter. You nod, say nothing. He laughs like you've made a joke. That night you scrub your sandals 3 times, even though you never touch the sand. There is blood in your dreams. It's not yours, but it still wakes you. You sit up, light the lamp, and stare at your hands. They're clean. But you don't trust them. Because the games are supposed to be a gift to the gods. But sometimes you wonder, which gods exactly? And how many more gifts they'll demand. She's 12. That's what they say when she arrives. 12, from a wealthy house. Dark hair in a single braid, eyes too wide to know better. You watch her from your place near the second brazier. She keeps looking around the atrium, counting columns aloud under her breath. On the first day, she asks what kind of oil is used in the sacred lamps. On the second, she asks why there are 6 of you, and not 5, or 7. On the third, she asks what happens if the fire goes out. You glance at the eldest Vestal. Her jaw tightens. No one answers. She doesn't understand yet. That silence is the answer. That questions can be crimes if you ask them clearly enough. She follows you during temple rounds, not assigned, just curious. Why do we walk clockwise? Why must the flame be fed by you and not the priest? You keep your face still. You do not answer, but she doesn't stop. One day she stands beside the sacred hearth, palms extended to feel the warmth, and says, softly, "Do you think the gods care if I blink during prayer?" You almost drop the ladle. That night, she doesn't come to supper. No one mentions it. You pass her mat before bed. The blanket is folded, untouched. You listen for her breath in the dark. It isn't there. The next morning she's back, but quieter. Her braid is tighter. Her eyes are swollen. She sweeps ash without speaking. She walks behind the others now. She no longer asks. Not about oil, not about gods, not about blinking. You feel it before she does, the moment her silence becomes permanent. It's not fear, it's not understanding, it's surrender. Later that week, the senior Vestal praises her stillness, says she's learning. The girl smiles, but it's the kind of smile that doesn't reach anything. You wonder what she sees now when she looks at the fire. If she sees a god, or a warning. One evening, you kneel beside her to grind barley. She whispers without turning her head. "They said I was chosen." A pause. Is this what it means? You want to answer. You do. But you only press the pestle harder into the bowl. Stone grinding against stone. The next day she scrapes her palm on a cracked basin. It bleeds. She flinches, then quickly hides her hand. You notice. You say nothing. She notices that you noticed. From then on, she watches you more. Not like a student, like someone asking a silent question. How did you survive it? How did you stop asking? And the worst part is, you don't know anymore. Because when you look at the flame now, you don't see God's either. You see her reflection, and then your own. You hear his arrival before you see him. A change in the footsteps outside the atrium, sandals over marble, heavier, slower. You know them all by sound now, but his footsteps always announce themselves differently, not in volume, but in silence. Everyone stops moving. The flame still burns, but your limbs forget how to move naturally. You're not supposed to fear the Pontifex Maximus, but then you're not supposed to feel much of anything. He enters with 3 attendants, all in white, but his is a whiter white, a robe that seems too clean for Rome. He never sweats, never limps, never coughs or squints. It's as if divinity has made him sterile. He doesn't speak to you, not directly, not unless he must. When he does, he calls you by title. Vestal, Guardian, never your name. You stopped expecting to hear it long ago. You kneel, not too quickly, not too slow, just right. You lower your eyes, but not your head. Look toward the floor, not into it. You've learned how much of your gaze is allowed. It is a math that changes with his mood. Sometimes he speaks of omens, rain that arrived too late, wheat that withered too soon. He blames the temples, the rituals, the timing. Sometimes he blames you. Not aloud, but he lingers longer by your station, asks to inspect your oil flasks, your hands, asks if you feel the flame has dimmed. What does one say to that? Yes. No. Is the wrong answer the one he's already decided on? Once, he speaks to the others and gestures toward you. You are not meant to hear, but the word distracted does not need translation. You do not sleep well that night. You do not fear his hand. He is not cruel in the way soldiers are. You fear his memory, the way he remembers mistakes, the way he speaks of purity as if it were something he can detect by smell, the way he can decide without asking. In public, he praises the Vestals, says the flame is Rome's soul, says you are its guardians. But behind temple walls, his eyes are more calculating, less reverent. He does not see 6 girls, he sees 6 possible failures. Once he brings a guest, a senator with thick fingers and too many rings. The man looks at you for too long. The Pontifex notices, says nothing, just places a hand on the man's shoulder. You see the warning in it, but not for the man, for you. You begin to dread his visits, more than storms, more than hunger. Because storms pass, because hunger sleeps. But he watches with a gaze that weighs, and never leaves entirely. You find yourself dreaming of being summoned, of standing before him while he questions your breath, your posture, your past. You wake before the verdict, but not before the fear. One morning a younger Vestal forgets to bow, just a half-second delay. He does not correct her, does not scold. He just stares. And later that week she is assigned to the outer kitchens, far from the sacred flame. She doesn't ask why. She already knows. You once thought the gods were the ones you served, but now you are not so sure. Because the gods do not write reports. They do not assign duties. They do not remove names from ledgers. But the high priest does. And when he walks past you now, you bow deeper, not from reverence, from survival. It arrives folded between clean linen. You're not supposed to be the one sorting laundry. but someone traded duties, someone was late, someone got clever, and now it's in your hand. The cloth is warm, the parchment is warmer. It's not sealed, not signed, not addressed. It shouldn't be here. Nothing should be here. Your first instinct is to burn it. Your second is to hide it. Your third is the one you follow. You read. The writing is small, hurried, but not clumsy. It's not a love letter. Not exactly. There's no my heart or my darling or your lips. But there's a rhythm, a closeness, a kind of quiet hunger that lives between the lines. You read it once, then again, then a third time, slower. The lines say things like, I dreamed of the Tiber again. You were there, not as a Vestal, just as a girl. Do you remember the orange stall near the theatre? They still keep the peels in salt water. I don't need answers, just don't forget your name. You check for a signature. There is none, only a final line in smaller ink. Burn after. You don't. Not yet. You've never received a letter before, not even as a child, not even when your mother sent you away. Words like this, meant for you, shaped for you, they don't belong in your life. And yet, here they are. You hide it under your tunic. Tuck it in the fold where your waistband meets your back. It's the closest thing to a pocket you're allowed. Your skin itches where the parchment rests, as if your body knows this is danger. And still, you don't burn it. That night, you lay awake longer than usual. Not because you're afraid, but because your name is echoing in your head. You haven't heard it spoken in 3 years. But now, you remember the way your father used to say it, the way your sister whispered it when you couldn't sleep. You mouth it to yourself, not aloud, just behind your teeth. You wonder who sent it. A brother? A neighbour? A boy who passed fruit through the gate before your selection day? You try to match the handwriting to a face, but memory is cruel. It offers feelings, not images. The next morning you keep the letter in your sleeve, folded flat. You sweat, you itch, you don't complain. You almost drop it when you kneel for inspection. The high priest doesn't notice, or pretends not to. Later that week, another linen bundle arrives. You unfold the sheet slowly, nothing inside. Just cloth and a single peel of salted orange. You eat it without washing your hands. You consider writing back, once, just once. But there's no paper, no ink, and no one would carry your words. The act of writing would be seen as intent. Intent would be seen as betrayal. So instead, you think very hard. You think at the walls, you think at the door, you think at the girl folding laundry 2 rooms over. Weeks pass, no new letters, no salted fruit, no strange glances. You begin to wonder if it was real, or if your mind is so hungry it invented it. Then, one evening, under the hem of your bed mat, you find it again. The letter, folded and yellowing. You forgot to burn it. You stare at the line again. Don't forget your name. And you realise you've already forgotten his. You do not speak of it. Not because it's wrong, not because it's forbidden, but because it is yours. And nothing in your life belongs to you anymore, except this. It doesn't come every night. Just sometimes. Just enough. You're walking barefoot in a street you half remember. Dust clings to your feet, warm as bread crust. No one notices you, and that feels like freedom. You walk past vendors selling salted plums, past a boy lifting a chicken by the wings, past a girl with a chipped cup catching rainwater in the shade. You're not in robes, you're not in white, you're not anyone at all. Sometimes you buy an orange, sometimes a honey cake. sometimes just silence. And in that silence, you remember what it feels like to be hungry without shame. The dream always ends the same way. You find a wall covered in ivy, and someone is waiting on the other side. You don't climb, you don't speak, you just reach through the leaves, and for 1 second, you're not alone. You wake before the face appears, every time. It's part of the ritual now. The pillow is damp, your hand is still half curled, and for a moment your body doesn't remember where you are. You do not share this with the others, even the kind ones, even the girl who traded chores with you last week, because dreams are fragile, and sharing would be a kind of death. Once you almost tell the girl with the narrow eyes, the one who used to hum while sweeping ashes. You think she might understand. You think she might dream too. But before the words come, you remember the punishments carved in law. Impure thoughts, unchaste imagination. And your mouth forgets how to form vowels. So you keep the dream, and each time it returns you add another detail. The smell of fennel in the alley, the rough edge of a cartwheel, a snatch of foreign language near the docks, a different street every time, but always the ivy, always the hand. You begin to crave sleep in a new way, not for rest, not for ritual, but to return, to go back, even if it's nowhere, even if it's made up, even if it's dangerous. One evening, the girl with narrow eyes catches you staring too long at a wall of ivy near the baths. You pretend you're admiring the shade. She says nothing. But the next day, she avoids your gaze. Just in case. Rome doesn't have many green places anymore. They keep paving it, bricking over anything soft. But sometimes, near the temple's edge where offerings are left to rot, a seedling pushes through. Not allowed. Not tended, but alive. You don't water it. You don't look at it directly. But every few days you pass by just close enough, just to know it's still there, still possible. Sometimes, during public festivals, you're paraded in front of crowds. Civic duty, they call it. You ride in a chariot, veiled, expressionless. But the people cheer. And sometimes someone calls a name that almost sounds like yours. You flinch. Later, in your cot, you dream again. But this time you hesitate at the wall. You don't reach through. You kneel instead. And say nothing. Because what if no one is there? You wake before the answer comes. As always. Because this is the dream you don't share. And maybe never will. It doesn't happen all at once. You don't wake up one day and feel different. You feel the shift in smaller ways. The way the older Vestals start using your name with less softness. The way the chief attendant starts handing you the copper basin instead of carrying it for you. The way the statue of Vesta starts looking at you. Or maybe it's just that you've learned how to look back. The ceremony is not public. But it is not private either. Nothing about your life will ever be truly private again. It begins at dawn. The Domus Publica is quiet. Even the birds seem to know not to sing. You are led to the Atrium Vestae by 2 older Vestals. Your steps echo. You're not allowed to speak. Not today. The High Pontiff is already waiting. So is the Chief Scribe, and a lictor holding a rod of birch. Not for punishment, for symbolism. Because today you are being bound, not by rope, not by law, by words, and by blood. The vow is simple, but it's spoken in a Latin so old that even the gods might have trouble translating. It begins with a prayer, then a silence, then a cut, a small one, just across the palm. The knife is ceremonial, bronze, not iron. Iron would offend the goddess. You bleed into a basin filled with barley and dried poppy petals. The mixture will be burned later. not because it's sacred, but because it's dangerous. You are now dangerous. The High Pontiff places his hand on your shoulder and recites the binding oath to serve for 30 years, to remain chaste in body and mind, to tend the sacred fire of Rome without interruption, to let no man, no shadow, no whispered desire come between you and your duty, to live as if you were already half divine. You repeat it. Your voice cracks only once. You're not punished for it, but you remember, and so will they. They give you a new robe, not the training shift you've worn for years. This one is heavier, stiffer, and the white is whiter, not from cloth, but from expectation. You wear it like you'd wear armour, if armour could suffocate. There is no applause, no feast, no family waiting outside with gifts. You're walked back to your quarters and handed a comb, a mirror, a tray of lentils. The fire must be watched again by sunset. You thought you would feel different, wiser, holier. You just feel tired. Your hand is still bleeding through the linen wrap. You lie in bed that night and whisper the vow to yourself, to see if you still believe it. The words taste like ash. You're not sure if that's normal. The next morning, no one congratulates you. They just speak to you differently, with more formality, more distance, as if you've been replaced. Maybe you have. The girl is gone. The Vestal remains. One of the older Vestals brushes your hair that night. She doesn't speak, but before she leaves, she says quietly, "Don't dream too loudly." And you wonder, did she hear you last night? Or was she only remembering her own dream? You want to ask if it gets easier, but the oath forbids idle talk. So you press your fingers against the linen on your palm, feel the sting, the proof, and remind yourself, pain is a kind of prayer too. It happens in the hour just before dawn, when the city still holds its breath. You hear the footsteps first, not hurried, not loud, just purposeful. Then the knock, 3 times, on the inner door of your chamber. Not a summons, a signal. You sit up without thinking, dress in silence, wrap your belt twice tightly. You already know. One of the elder Vestals has died. Not in scandal, not in shame, not in exile, but in sleep, after 57 years of service. She'd been a Vestal longer than anyone alive remembered being a child. You are not permitted to cry. The goddess requires composure, even in death, especially in death. But your throat clenches when you see the marble stillness of her face. She looks like she's still listening. The others wrap her in linen. No wailing, no prayers, just one whispered line. She kept the fire. You walk behind the procession, past the sacred grove, through the eastern gate, out where the priests wait. She will not be buried with family. She hasn't had family in decades. She will be laid in a tomb paid for by the Senate, blessed by the Pontifex Maximus, sealed by a man with a white veil over his mouth. Because even in death she must not speak. The ritual is older than your tongue. Fire and salt, wine and poppies. The lictors circle her with branches. The chief augur scatters grain. A boy sings something in Oscan you do not understand. The flames take slowly, as if even they do not want her to go. She taught you how to braid your hair, how to read the flight of birds, how to tell if a senator was lying by watching his fingers. You do not speak of these things. They are not part of the ritual. You just stand still and hold the bronze bowl until your arms ache. Afterward, the younger Vestals return to the Domus Publica. But you stay. So do 2 others, the ones she mentored most. You're tasked with gathering the ashes. They are heavier than you thought ashes could be. You sleep in your robe that night. You dream of her voice. not speaking, humming, the same tune she used when lighting the hearth in winter. You wake up and can't remember it. The next day, her name is carved into a wall inside the temple, not on the outside, not for the people, just for the others like her. A record of service, not of life. You trace the letters with your fingers and wish they had left space for a smile. Her room is emptied before the end of the week. Her robes are burned, her sandals given to a poorer servant. Only one thing is kept, the iron key she wore around her neck. It now hangs from the belt of the eldest living Vestal. They don't say it aloud, but everyone knows. The goddess never leaves a seat empty for long. By next spring a new girl will arrive, braided, frightened, silent, and you will have to teach her how to light the fire without burning herself. You sit by the hearth that night. The flames dance the way they always have. The ashes beneath them are black, but you know, somewhere in there is the last breath of the woman who showed you how to kneel. You want to whisper her name, but that too is forbidden. The city outside is celebrating something. You can hear flutes, drums, coins being thrown. A parade, maybe, or a new console. You wonder if they even know she's gone. If they remember who kept their fire lit through winters they barely noticed. You attend her death in silence, because that is what you were trained to do. But that night, when no one is watching, you let the sleeve of your robe fall and press your forearm to the hearth, just close enough to feel the heat, to sting. And that is your prayer, your goodbye, your act of defiance. It begins like a rumour, whispers, no louder than breath, a glance held too long, a senator who pauses mid-step when passing the temple. Nothing you can name, nothing you can point at. But something shifts. You are not the one accused, but that doesn't matter. When a Vestal is condemned, all others are shadowed. The girl is 16, newer than you, still walks like she's apologising to the floor. She disappears from the temple one evening. By dawn she's seen again, not in white, but in chains. The Senate does not speak her name. The Pontifex does not meet your eyes. But every Vestal knows what's coming. There will be no public trial, no chance to plead. She's sacred property. She's Rome's fire, and Rome believes she let it go out. Not literally, but in the worst way, the way that involves a man. The evidence. A slave swears he saw her speaking with a man under moonlight. Another claims she was missing during an eclipse. A third confesses to nothing but shakes too hard to be lying. The man in question is already dead. They executed him before they asked his name. The ritual must follow ancient law. You are taught this over and over. The city must not spill her blood. To kill a Vestal is to stain the very heart of Rome, so they find another way, a cleaner way. They call it mercy. You call it horror. She is dressed in bridal white, as if she is marrying the earth. Her wrists are bound with soft wool rope. No one explains why. There is no danger she'll run. She's barely eating. She doesn't cry. That is what you remember most. She doesn't cry. The procession begins at dusk, down the sacred way, through crowds that are told to be silent. You stand among them, hood drawn low. You're not supposed to be here, but no one stops you. She walks like she's already underground. The pit is near the Colline Gate, a deep chamber dug specially for this day. A small staircase, a couch, a lamp, a loaf of bread, a jug of water. Not gifts, excuses. So Rome can say, she was not killed. She was left with provisions. The gods will decide. The priest leading the ritual does not look at her face. He He recites an invocation from a scroll so old its corners crumble in the breeze. When he finishes, he steps back. 2 lictors lead her down the steps. The earth does not tremble. The sky does not darken. Nothing protests. Then comes the part you will never forget. The stone. 6 men push a flat slab across the mouth of the pit. It grinds slowly, louder than it should be, until the sound stops, and so does she. No one speaks for a long time. Even the wind seems unsure what to do. Then someone coughs, and another starts clapping. A man in armour raises his cup. The crowd doesn't cheer, but they do not leave in grief. Rome has cleansed itself. You walk away before they start pouring soil. You do not want to see what her white robe looks like under dirt. Back at the temple, no one says her name, not even in whispers. Her room is cleared by sundown. The high priest gathers you that evening, tells you the fire must be watched especially closely this week, that Rome must not see grief in the eyes of her daughters. You nod. All of you nod, and no one breathes. That night, you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening, as if you might hear her, still breathing, still waiting. There is no sound, only the echo of the stone. You're not allowed to grieve. Not publicly, not when your robes are clean, not when the forum fills with incense and official decrees. The burial is 3 days past, and already Rome has other things to celebrate. A victory in Numidia, a triumph for a general you've never met, another temple to be dedicated. You are summoned. It begins like it always does. A scroll delivered to the temple, wax seal, senator markings, a short list of names. Yours is on it. You dress in full regalia, ivory stola, hair arranged in 6 braids, red woolen band across your brow. You carry no torch today, only presents. The forum is packed, every marble step lined with men in togas, vendors shouting about olives, a boy spilling wine down a statue's foot. And there you are, in the centre, the eye of Rome's storm. You climb the steps to the new temple. You've never heard of the god before. Some hybrid of older names, fashioned more for politics than worship. You press incense into a brazier, hold your hands aloft, mouth the invocation as taught. You do not pray, not really. The gods, if they are watching, already took someone. The high priest declares the temple blessed. A cheer rises, coins tossed for luck. You step aside. Another senator steps forward, his robe edged in purple, his breath sharp with spiced wine. He bows toward you, not with reverence, but with spectacle. Later, a girl asks you, why do they always want us there? You could say, because we are symbols of Rome's purity, because our presence sanctifies the law, because without us the gods might notice how corrupt everything else is. But instead, you just say, because it makes them look good. That evening another offering, this one private. A noblewoman arrives at the temple with oil, figs, and a silver token of her lost child. She insists it be blessed by a Vestal. You are chosen. You do the rites, you offer the flame, you bow your head. You do not tell her you buried someone 3 days ago, alive. In the following week, a peace treaty is signed, a general retires, a senator's son takes his father's oath. Each time, a Vestal must witness it, not for legal accuracy, for divine optics. They say Rome stands on 2 things, the sword and the flame, the soldier and the Vestal. But only one of you has to keep smiling after watching someone suffocate. At the temple, a child brings grapes, says her father made her. You thank her with a nod. The next day, a donkey is slaughtered for purification. You watch as blood spills into a bowl, You're not allowed to flinch. This is sacred work. This is your work. At the festival of Vesta, you must light the first torch. You rise before the sun. You wash in water from the Tiber. You wear white linen spun just for this day. The crowd watches, senators and slaves alike. They want to see a flame that does not waver. You strike flint to steel, once, twice, 3 times. The spark takes. The fire is born. They cheer. You do not. In the evening a feast. Roasted lamb, honey cakes, figs. Too many hands reaching for you. Too many toasts made in your name. They call you daughter of Rome. They say the city sleeps peacefully because of you. You smile, because that is what you are trained to do. No one asks if you are at peace. That night, in the quiet of the temple, you trim the wick of the sacred flame. The embers pulse orange. You place new wood. You whisper nothing. Because the gods already know, and they are still hungry. It starts with the pigeons. They stop landing on the Capitol steps, stop gathering near the bakery stalls, stop flying altogether. Then the dogs grow quiet. Then the bread turns early. Then the sky hangs too low, too yellow, too still. The city doesn't panic all at once. It waits, watches. And when the Tiber floods early, and a child is born with no eyes, and the grain ships from Sicily arrive 3 weeks late, that's when the city turns toward the temple. It turns toward you. You're called to the forum, but this is no triumph. There are no wreaths, only torches and fear. A senator grabs your arm as you pass. His voice is quiet, desperate. Tell me, this isn't a sign. You do not answer. You've learned that silence often comforts more than truth. The Pontifex Maximus declares a lustratio, a ritual cleansing of the city. You will walk at the front. You wake before dawn, dress in robes still damp with the night air. Your sandals feel too tight. The street is lined with people holding olive branches. Criers chant prayers. Oxen are slaughtered at crossroads. Perfumed smoke follows your every step. Children throw flower petals at your feet. A woman begs you to bless her sick husband. You do not know if it helps. Inside the temple, the fire is still burning. You kneel and feed it dry pine, the only wood that crackles loud enough to sound like courage. A priest tells you the Senate will increase your stipend. You are the city's hope, he says. He does not ask how much you sleep, or if your hands tremble at night. At the market, a man spits on the ground. The gods are punishing us, he mutters. He doesn't look at you, but his friend does. You walk faster, back straight, eyes forward. Your shadow trails longer than it should. It's the only part of you allowed to bend. That week, the temple receives more offerings than ever. Baskets of figs, garlands of marigold, amulets shaped like eyes, letters with no return name. You place them all before the flame. You whisper their contents one by one. The gods are listening. You pray they are not laughing. Rome leans, not physically, politically, emotionally. The augurs read entrails and see bad signs. The omens grow stranger. 2-headed calves, thunder from a cloudless sky. And through it all, you are asked to attend every public ritual, to smile, to nod, to assure. One night, a child is brought to the temple. He is quiet, thin, eyes like bruises. His mother insists he touched a cursed coin, that he needs to be purified. You light incense, circle him with smoke, whisper old words you barely believe. He cries when you touch his forehead. You're not allowed to cry with him. At night, you lie in your chamber, your ears full of silence, the kind that grows like mould. Another priest was overheard saying this year might be the end of Rome, that the gods are turning away. You stare at the ceiling, count the lines in the plaster, count your breath. You do not sleep, because the city doesn't let you. In the coming days, the rains return, the market steadies, a festival is declared. A senator gives credit to the gods, a merchant gives credit to the new governor. But an old woman tells her neighbour it was the Vestal, the young one, the one who does not blink. You carry their fear, you carry their hope, you carry more than your body was built for. But the city leans on you, because it has forgotten how to stand on its own. It begins with a single sentence. You don't see who wrote it. You only hear the priest's voice, gentle, too gentle, as he asks if you've been in the library more often than usual. Then the sentence. There is concern regarding her attachments. No names, no details, no charges. Just concern. It's not an official accusation. Not yet. It's a precautionary inquiry. They tell you not to worry. They call it standard. They say your record is spotless. But you notice the change, how the other Vestals speak with less warmth, how the Flamekeeper triple checks your log, how your sandals are no longer beside the others in the vestibule. You remember stories from your first year, the girl who smiled too often, the one who laughed during a funeral, the one who was seen walking too closely beside a soldier. None of them are here anymore. No one says why, but you remember how their rooms were emptied overnight. You wake earlier now, clean your own tools, refold your robes twice before each ceremony, not because you fear the gods, but because you fear men in dark tunics with scrolls and neutral expressions. Fear doesn't come with thunder, it comes with a priest asking how often you pray. Your questions aren't answered. They're redirected, softened, dissolved. You ask which attachments. They say it's best not to know. You ask who voiced concern. They say it's anonymous. You ask what rule you may have broken. They ask if you've been sleeping well. Rome does not need evidence. It needs reassurance. A single rumour can be soothed with a demonstration of justice. A scapegoat is not proof, it's a sacrifice. You're not the first, you know that now. You read their names in the old scrolls when no one was watching. Postumia, accused of immodest dress. Licinia, of speaking with a cousin too often. Amelia, of favouring one side of the altar more than the other. The punishments differ, but they all vanish from the records the same way. You remember the pit, the rope, the whisper of soil. You wonder how close you are to it now. The investigation is quiet. You're not questioned again, but you are watched. A temple scribe is suddenly reassigned to assist you. He smiles too often and writes too much. You drop a plate and hear footsteps approach, not to help, but to observe. Even your silence feels loud. And then, just as suddenly, it stops. No announcement, no verdict, no exoneration. The priest simply tells you may now resume full ceremonial duties, as if you ever stopped. But everything has changed. The Vestals still braid your hair, but they don't touch your shoulders. The temple attendants still greet you, but never first. Your steps echo louder in the hall, or maybe it's just that no one walks beside you anymore. You learn to keep your hands still, to breathe evenly, to nod instead of speak. Every movement is now a testimony. Every blink, a line of defence. You don't know who accused you, but you learn that Rome doesn't need an accuser. Only a moment of doubt, only a whisper. And now you understand why so many of the older Vestals walk like ghosts. You stare into the flame. It doesn't judge. It doesn't forgive. It just burns. They don't tell you the date. It just arrives, like winter, or a death no one was preparing for. A messenger appears after morning rites, He doesn't kneel. He doesn't meet your eye. He simply hands over a scroll and waits for you to read the words aloud. It's short, official, unemotional. It begins with the College of Pontiffs in its wisdom and ends with you're hereby released. No ceremony, no final blessing, no tearful goodbye. You're allowed to pack your things. The things that never really belong to you. A comb, a spare robe, a single bronze mirror with your initials scratched into the back. A priest walks you out, not the high priest. Someone junior, someone polite, but in a hurry. You want to ask if you're supposed to say something, if there's a final bow, if the gods expect a parting word, but the gates are already open. The sun feels too bright, the streets too loud, the world too wide. You haven't been in the Forum alone in over 2 decades. It smells like fish oil, donkey sweat, and someone baking barley flatbread. You feel dizzy. You sit down near a well. A child offers you a fig. You thank him, but your voice doesn't sound like yours. It hasn't had to speak casually in years. Even your mouth has forgotten how to be normal. You thought you'd feel something. Relief, freedom, maybe fear, but mostly you just feel unfinished. The old story said you'd be wealthy now, that the state grants you land, money, even marriage proposals. But no one tells you what to do when your body has forgotten how to belong to itself, or how to eat when no one's watching, or how to sleep in a bed without sacred linen. The senator's widow offers you a room. She calls it charity. You call it something to do. You help tend her garden. You light her lamps. You fold linens in silence because silence is what you know. A man tries to court you once. He brings you olives, laughs too loud, says he doesn't care that you're ex-sacred. But when you don't laugh back, he stops visiting. You're not surprised. You become a story people tell. She used to be a Vestal, never married. Doesn't talk much. You pass people in the market who nod respectfully but never stop to chat. You learn to stop expecting them to. You write sometimes. Little notes, memories, pieces of prayers you still remember. You don't keep them. You burn them, one at a time, over a small clay oil lamp that never seems to run dry. Sometimes you return to the temple gate, not to go in, just to see. The new girls wear the same robes, stand with the same posture, recite the same rites. You wonder if they know your name, if they're told your story. They never look toward the gate. You realise after a while that you're not someone Rome remembers. You are someone it once needed, and that is not the same thing. One night, you dream of fire, not the sacred one, not the temple hearth, just a small lonely spark in a clay bowl on a stone windowsill. You hold your hands near it, not to worship, but to feel warm. You wake up with tears on your face. You wipe them away, slowly, without ceremony. Because you're no longer sacred, you're simply someone who once was. You hear it long before you see it. The fire, still crackling, still sacred, still not yours. You walk past the temple, not close enough to be noticed, just enough to feel the warmth brush your cheek like a memory that doesn't belong to you anymore. They say it has never gone out, not in all the years since your release. They say the gods still approve, still guard, still speak, if you listen long enough. But you don't listen anymore. You've learned that silence can be a kind of voice, and forgetting can be holy too. The world does not look like it used to. New stones in the road, new statues in the forum, new names being praised, old temples, but young gods. Someone stops you one afternoon, asks if you've been here long. You smile and say, long enough. They nod, not understanding. They never do. You visit the hills sometimes, where you were taken as a girl, where the gods first learned your name. Or maybe you whispered it there yourself and hoped they listened. The grass has grown wild, the stones are broken, the wind is the only thing that still kneels. You kneel too just once, not to pray, not to remember, but to feel what it's like to do it without being watched. Some days you wonder if you ever believed, not in the gods, but in the rules, the silence, the shape of your life, the order you gave your bones. Your spine still straightens at the sound of a bell. Your feet still turn inward when you walk. Your hands still fold when you think. Even after all this time, you carry the temple inside you, even after it locked its doors behind you. You hear that one of the new girls stumbled, not badly, but enough for the gossip to stir. They say the high priest frowned, that the sacred flame flickered. You say nothing. You know now that fear is inherited, that Rome doesn't need its gods to be real, only feared, only followed, and so it builds them into girls and burns belief into silence. Sometimes, on the edge of sleep, you hear your name the way it was said when you were 10. Not sacred, not careful, just yours. It always makes your chest hurt. You once asked if the fire ever spoke. You waited years for an answer. Now you think it always did, just not in words. Only in heat and silence, and the way it kept going long after you left. You pass the temple again. It's dusk. The steps are empty, the columns tall and cold. A breeze nudges your robe as if asking permission to carry part of you away. You do not go inside. You do not stop. You do not look back. You just walk, because Rome already has everything it needs. And the flame burns without you,